who I am. They might want to know who I am. You can tell them so who I am. If anybody asks you who I am, just tell them the Afropella Griot. If anybody asks you who I am, they might want to know who I am. You can tell them so who I am. If anybody asks you who I am, just tell them the Afropella Griot. Make way for a story, make way for a song. The ancestors move the program along. Call up a proverb, a parable too. Ancestors help me do what I do. If anybody asks you who I am, they might want to know who I am. You can tell them so who I am. If anybody asks you who I am, just tell them the Afropella Griot. Just tell them the Afropella Griot. Just tell them the Afropella Griot. And after that, you can tell them I'm Sister Pierce's daughter. That's why I sing. You can tell them I'm a lot of things. But I'm going to share a story called an African story and song. And it's an interpretation of a story that I kind of rewrote myself. So it goes like this. There was once a village where the women gathered. And when the women gathered in that village, they gathered for a lot of different things. But one of the things that they did, they had a tradition. If one of them was with child, the women would gather around that person. And they would take her out into the woods, out into nature, so that they could hear and learn the song of that child. So several times they would go out and listen to how the water flowed, or listen to the birds, listen to the rustling of the trees, because they had to create for that child a song. And when the child was born, the village would gather and sing that song in honor of the child. And throughout the child's life, when there were milestones, celebrations, the village would gather and sing that song to the child. But the most important thing was when that child did something that was in opposition to the rules of the village, that was hurtful to someone else, that was wrong, the village would take that child, put that child in the middle of a circle and sing that song, because they wanted that child to know that that child was loved. That child had people who cared about him. And even when they did something wrong, they did not punish the child. They just reinforced the love that they had for the child. So there was a girl that was born in that way, under that tradition. And she grew up, and she got married. And in her marriage, she moved far away from her village. And the new village that she lived in, they didn't follow that tradition. So that girl forgot her story, and she forgot her song. So she went about her life, living it without ever telling the story, without ever singing her song. Until one day, the story and the song started talking to one another. They said, we got to get out of here. She is killing us. We are not breathing fresh air. We are not growing because she is not sharing us with anyone. So her husband had gone away on a trip. He sold goods and he went hunting. And while he was gone, she was maintaining the house. And one day she took her nap in the middle of the day, which we sometimes do. But she took her nap and she was sleeping, her mouth wide open. And the story jumped out. And the song jumped out too. And the story said, I'm so glad to be out of there. I was dying. I wasn't getting any breath. I was not using any of my creativity. And the song said, I know just what you mean. It was really terrible in there, but I got a song. Breathe on me. Breathe on me. blow life to the heart of my soul to be what I can be. And the story started there. Breathe on me. Breathe on me. Creative winds blow life to the heart of my soul to be what I can be. Breathe on me. Breathe on me. Creative winds blow life to the heart of my soul to be what I can be. Well, the story and the song, they were so happy to be out of her, they started expressing their creativity. The story turned itself into a grande booba made of beautiful African lace with sparkles affixed inside the fabric and moseyed over to the door and jumped up on a hook. The song turned itself into a pair of beautiful drum sandals, black leather with cowrie shells on the top and little drums on the side. And he walked out and put himself right on the mat that entered into the hut. Her husband came home and he saw the shoes from the distance. And when he came in the house and saw the booba, he was assured that somebody was visiting them. Not just anybody, but somebody of rare importance, because you could tell from the outfit that it was not somebody poor that was visiting the house. So he said, well, he walked in and found her. He said, who's here? Who's visiting us? She said, ain't nobody here. He said, but I see a booba at the door, and I saw some sandals on the mat. I don't know what you're talking about. Ain't nobody here. Wait a minute. I know that I saw some sandals on the mat and a booba hanging by the door, and that's something that a man wears. So I'm going to ask you again. Who's here? And she said, I don't know what you're talking about. I don't know anything about no sandals. I don't know anything about no booba. Stop asking me that. Now, the husband, on his trip, he had met some elders. And he met an elder who shared a story with him. And what he learned from that story that the elder shared was that you should hide your anger until tomorrow. And all that your eyes see, you must not believe. So he kept rolling that over in his head. You must hide your anger till tomorrow. All that your eyes see, you must not believe. Because he didn't want to answer her. So he went and he gathered his sleeping mat and he left the house. And he went down to the village temple. And he decided he would stay there. Now the wife was scratching her head because she didn't know what was going on. And she was, what was he talking about? You know, about in the shoes and the booba had moseyed on, expressing themselves in other forms. And they just did that because she had almost suffocated them to death. So they wanted to get back at her. So anyway, the husband, he was down at the temple, and he laid his mat out, and he decided that he would just stay there for the night. And he kind of just went to sleep. Now the wife, later on, she put out the lights in the house, and she went to bed herself, still scratching her head, not knowing what was going on. So, down at the temple, which was unlit when the husband went in, and he kind of rolled over and kept seeing sparks of light inside the temple. And then the sparks of light started talking to one another. So it's like, how was it today in your house? What happened up there? Because what they did, when the people put the lights out in the house, they went down to the temple and talked about what happened in the house. Okay, that's what they did. Y'all don't know what the lights do when y'all turn them out. But I'm here to tell you, that's one of the things they do. Now, the light from the house where the lady lived came in late. So everybody said, well, what happened? Why are you late? He said, you should have been in that house today. You don't know what went on up in there today. I knew something was going to happen because I heard the story, I heard the song talking about how they were suffocating inside of her. They wanted to get out, they wanted to be free, and they chose the day to do it. Well, they jumped out, And one turned itself into a grand booba, and the other one turned itself into a pear sandwich, and then the husband came home. Well, when the husband came home and was asking the wife about what happened, the wife didn't know because she was asleep when they came out. She was asleep while they were singing, and she certainly didn't see him transform into anything. So he left the house. Now the husband, who was laying in the temple, actually heard them. And he said, oh, so that's what happened. So he stayed there until the next day. And he went back home. He went into the house. He walked up to his wife. He said, please, share with me your story. Share with me your song. And she said, what story? What song? Because she didn't know them. So the moral of the story is songs and stories are to be shared. This is my story, and this is my song, and I'm going to share